My name is Evan Brooks, and if someone had told me that a cheap smartwatch would blow my entire life apart, I would have laughed, because until a few months ago I thought my relationship with Maya Dalton was the kind of thing people envied. Stable, affectionate, almost boring in its predictability. And I honestly thought boring was good, because after my last breakup I swore I wanted peace, not drama, and Maya seemed like the embodiment of that peace. Always calm, always composed, the kind of girlfriend who remembered to pack snacks for road trips and left sticky notes in my lunch bag telling me to drink water. So when everything crashed down, it was like getting blindsided by a freight train I never heard coming. And it all started because her smartwatch kept glitching. She bought the watch on sale, and I remember she joked about how it was probably a knockoff even though it looked real. But she wanted something to track her steps and sleep. And one night while we were watching TV, it buzzed nonstop, vibrating against the coffee table like it was having a seizure. And she groaned and said the app was being ridiculous again. But she didn't get up to check it, which was weird, because Maya checked every notification the second it popped up, even if it was just a random coupon from a coffee shop she'd been to once 3 years ago. I didn't push her about it, because I figured it was probably nothing. But something had been off for weeks, little things I kept telling myself I imagined, like the way she always put her phone face down, or how she suddenly had late-night team meetings even though her job designing marketing content never had urgent deadlines before. And she started wearing more makeup to work. Not a little more, but a dramatic, intentional shift, like she was dressing to impress someone specific. I tried not to overthink, because accusing someone you love without proof felt like the fastest way to tank your own peace. And I wasn't about to be that paranoid boyfriend who goes through his partner's things. So I ignored it all until the smartwatch did something I didn't even know smartwatches could do. It synced itself to my phone. I swear I didn't touch anything. I didn't open any settings. It just paired automatically because it was close to my device when she took it off to shower. And suddenly my screen lit up with a notification that said, "New message on Maya's watch," and before I could even process why it was showing on my phone, the full message popped up. I won't forget the exact words, because they carved themselves into my mind like someone etching stone. "Can't stop thinking about last night. When can we do that again? You were unreal." At first, I genuinely thought it must have been for her best friend. Maybe a joke, maybe something about going out, maybe just an inside reference I didn't get. But then another message came through immediately after that said, "Don't leave me hanging, gorgeous. Your boyfriend's still clueless." My stomach dropped so fast I swear the room spun, and I stood frozen, staring at the notification, unable to decide whether I should look away or wait for another message. And another one came. "Delete these. You're too careless." I didn't even realize I had stopped breathing until my chest burned. I tried to tell myself there had to be an explanation, maybe a stalker, maybe spam, maybe anything other than what it looked like, but I wasn't stupid, and my body knew the truth before my mind was ready to accept it. Because the shaking started first, then the numbness, then the dread that crawled up my spine like ice. She came out of the shower singing, completely unaware of the nuclear bomb exploding in my hands. And I didn't confront her immediately, because I couldn't move, couldn't think straight, couldn't decide what to do without sounding like a psycho invading her privacy, even though the watch had forced itself onto my phone without me touching a thing. She walked past me, kissed my cheek, and asked if I wanted pasta or chicken for dinner like nothing in the world was wrong. I told her I wasn't hungry and needed air, and I stepped outside to breathe, gripping my phone so tightly my fingers went white. I needed proof, real proof, something undeniable. Something I could confront her with that she couldn't spin into a misunderstanding. So I sat on the porch as the evening turned cold, waiting to see if more messages came through. And they did. They absolutely did. But the next ones weren't just incriminating. They were insane. I remember staring at the screen, watching the next message appear like some twisted confirmation of everything I already feared but still wasn't ready to accept. And it said, "I can still feel your nails in my back. I swear I've got marks everywhere," followed by a winking emoji that made my stomach churn. But before I could even recover, another one popped up saying, "Did he suspect anything when you came home? You played it cool, right?" And that one shattered the last tiny piece of denial I had been clinging to. I knew then that this wasn't a misunderstanding or some sick prank. It was real, and it had been going on long enough for the guy saved under the name C to feel this comfortable. And what terrified me wasn't just the cheating itself but the calmness Maya had shown the entire time. because the girl who was inside humming while brushing her hair had apparently spent the previous night doing God knows what with someone else and walked back into our home like it meant nothing. I didn't know whether to scream or collapse, but I forced myself to stay completely silent, because I realized that if I confronted her too soon, she'd twist everything, cry, deny, gaslight, whatever she needed to do to protect herself. And I wanted the full truth, the whole ugly picture, before I blew everything open. So I stayed outside long enough to let the numbness settle into something sharper, something controlled, and I went back in with a neutral face that felt like it barely fit my skull, telling her I had a headache and needed to lie down. She offered to make tea, sweet, caring Maya, and I almost flinched at how effortlessly she played the role, but I kept myself steady, thanking her softly, pretending I was exhausted. When she set the tea beside me and went back to scrolling on her phone, I turned slightly so she couldn't see my screen and opened the watch interface, digging through every tab, every setting, until I found the logs. The sync hadn't only shared messages, it had shared health data, activity stats, and most importantly, location points. And there it was. Last night she hadn't been at her team dinner at all. She'd been at an apartment complex across town from 7:14 p.m. to 1:03 a.m., and then she drove home, the route clearly mapped. She had stayed with whoever she was for almost 6 hours. My jaw tightened so hard it hurt, but I kept my breathing slow because I needed more than location. I needed a pattern. I scrolled through older logs, checking timestamps and comparing them to the nights she'd claimed overtime or dinner with coworkers or spontaneous gym sessions. And every one of those excuses matched extended stays at the same location or short drops at another address I didn't recognize. In total, I counted 9 visits within the last month alone. 9. While I was home making dinner, running errands for us, planning weekend trips, she had been out there cheating. I felt a wave of dizziness so strong I had to close my eyes, and in that moment, lying next to her in the same room while she unknowingly exposed her entire betrayal, something inside me hardened. I wouldn't yell. I wouldn't cry. I wouldn't let her manipulate me. I would gather everything, every scrap of evidence, every timeline, every message, and then I would walk away on my terms, not hers. But I needed to know who she was, because the initials meant nothing to me. I wasn't aware of any guy in her life whose name started with C that bothered me, because if he wasn't someone she'd mentioned even casually, that meant she was hiding him deeply, intentionally, which suggested the relationship might be far more serious than I wanted to think about. So later that night, when she fell asleep quickly like she always did after painting herself as exhausted from work, I slipped out of the room with her watch in hand. The band was cheap, the plastic already peeling at one edge, but I didn't care. It was now the most revealing device I had ever held. I opened the contacts saved on the watch, hoping maybe C would have initials or a display name, but instead there was only C with no picture, no details. That told me she had deliberately hidden him. And then the insane part began. At 2:11 a.m., while I sat on the couch scrolling through data, the watch buzzed. A message from him. I don't care if you're tired. I need to see you tomorrow. Don't flake again. Again. So she had been canceling on him. But the next message popped through before I could even process that one, and this one made the hair on my arms rise. If your boyfriend gets in the way again, I swear I'll handle it myself. You know I will. Handle it. Threatening me. And she had never mentioned any danger, any man, any drama. Nothing. My blood turned cold. What kind of person was she involved with? Why would she be with someone who talked like this? And why would she hide him so well if he wasn't just a fling but someone who clearly thought he had control over her? I sat frozen, staring at the words, because suddenly the situation wasn't just about cheating. It was about a man who sounded unstable, possessive, maybe dangerous. And Maya had dragged me unknowingly into his orbit. I thought that was the worst revelation I'd get that night, until one final message came through, short, simple, and absolutely chilling. Tell me when he's out of the picture. When that final message flashed across the screen saying, "Tell me when he's out of the picture," every instinct in my body switched from heartbreak to pure strategic survival, because there was something deeply wrong about the tone, something that didn't fit an ordinary cheating scenario. And as much as I wanted to believe this was simply a case of Maya being unfaithful, the wording made everything feel darker. Like she and this guy weren't just sneaking around but actually planning something. And the thought that they could be discussing getting rid of me made my chest tighten in a way I'd never felt before. I didn't want to assume the worst, but what else could out of the picture mean? The guy had already threatened to handle me, And she hadn't shut him down, hadn't corrected him, hadn't told him to stop, which meant she was allowing the conversation to go in that direction. As I sat there in the dark, only the dim glow of the watch screen lighting the room, I kept rereading the messages like maybe they would rearrange themselves into something harmless. But they didn't. And the more I stared, the more I realized I needed to be careful. Very careful, because if this guy was unstable, then confronting Maya too soon might give her time to warn him. And that could escalate into something unpredictable. I needed to know the full story, not just fragments from a smartwatch. And with her sound asleep in the bedroom, I took the risk of checking her phone. Something I had never done in our entire relationship. But this was no longer about jealousy or suspicion. This was about my safety. Her phone was locked with Face ID, and for a moment I thought I'd hit a dead end. But then I remembered she slept like a rock, and with my hands shaking, I held her phone up to her face. She didn't even stir as it unlocked instantly. I felt sick doing it, but I opened her messages, then her deleted folder, then her apps. Strangely, there was nothing. No suspicious threads, no hidden group chats, no flirty texts, nothing remotely resembling the messages on the watch. It was too clean, unnaturally clean, and that told me she had been wiping everything meticulously. But she wasn't careful with her photos. In the recently deleted album, buried between screenshots of recipes and old parking tickets, I found a picture that made my stomach drop. It was of Maya taken in a dimly lit apartment I didn't recognize, wearing clothes she had never worn around me, posing in a way she claimed she didn't do because she didn't like taking thirst trap pictures, and in the background was a man's silhouette. I zoomed in, but the figure was partly cut off by the frame. Still, the outline was unmistakable. Tall, broad-shouldered, the posture of someone confident or arrogant. The timestamp matched one of the nights she claimed she was working late. My hands shook as I restored more deleted photos, and with each restored image, the truth built itself piece by horrifying piece. There were pictures of food trays, wine glasses, sneakers placed next to hers at the door, a bathroom counter with 2 toothbrushes, one pink, one black. All the evidence of a second relationship. A life she had with someone else parallel to the one she had with me. But then I found something even more disturbing. A photo of a handwritten note on a countertop I didn't recognize, reading, "You know the deal. No mistakes. He has to be gone first. Gone first." My breathing faltered. That couldn't be real. Was he writing that to her? Was she writing that to him? Was it part of some twisted fantasy? And why would she take a picture of it? I scrolled further and found a blurry shot of a whiteboard, with words scribbled in red marker. Move out. Insurance. Alibi. Weekend trip. None of it made sense. It felt like I had stumbled into someone else's crime movie, except all the characters were wearing the faces of people I thought I knew. My mind raced through every possible explanation, but nothing sounded reasonable. I backed out of the photos and opened her notes app, where I found dozens of entries that seemed random until I realized many were password protected. I opened the unprotected ones first. Most were grocery lists, workout routines, schedules, but one stood out. It simply said, "He doesn't suspect anything. Keep calm. Don't rush. Friday might work." I stared at that line for what felt like minutes, forcing myself not to panic, because Friday was only 3 days away. What was happening on Friday? Why was she timing something? Was this guy pushing her to do something? Was she planning to meet him? And most importantly, where did I fit into their equation? I needed to see the locked notes. I tried obvious passwords: her birthday, the dog she had as a kid, her mother's middle name, but none worked. Finally, I tried the name she had saved the guy under on the watch. See, and unbelievably, see unlocked to notes. The first was a list of dates, all corresponding to her visits to his place. The second was just one sentence: "When everything is ready, he will disappear." I dropped the phone onto the couch cushion, my heart pounding in my ears so loudly it drowned out everything else. Disappear. Not break up with. Not leave. Disappear. No normal person uses that word about their partner unless something is deeply, dangerously off. I needed answers immediately, but not from Maya, not yet. Not until I knew who this man was, what his connection to her was, and what exactly they were planning. I picked up the watch again and opened the GPS history, then plugged the address she had visited most often into a search engine. A name popped up associated with the apartment's lease. And it wasn't someone unfamiliar. It was someone I recognized. Someone I never expected. Someone who made this entire situation so much worse. The name on the lease didn't make sense at first because my brain refused to accept it, but it was there in plain text. Impossible to misread. Colin Mercer, my coworker. Someone I saw almost every day at the office. Someone I had eaten lunch with, joked with. Someone who had helped me move a couch into my apartment last year when Maya and I decided to live together. And the shock hit me so hard I thought I might throw up because suddenly everything rearranged itself into a horrifyingly coherent picture. I remembered how Colin always asked casually about Maya. How he laughed too hard at stories involving her. How he once mentioned he saw her at a grocery store on the other side of town, which seemed weird at the time because she never shopped there, and now I realized he must have slipped up. I remembered how he teased me when I told him Maya and I were talking about maybe adopting a dog someday, saying something strange like, "Are you sure that's a good idea?" with a tone I'd interpreted as friendly sarcasm, but now, looking back, felt more like warning or possessiveness. And worst of all, I remembered how Maya once joked that she didn't like Colin because he was a little too intense, which must have been her way of planting a cover story long before I ever suspected anything. Now the man threatening me through a smartwatch wasn't some random stranger. It was someone who had been in my home, someone who knew my routines, someone who knew where I parked, when I worked, what time I left the gym, someone who could easily watch me without appearing suspicious. My entire body felt like it had turned to ice. I couldn't confront Maya with this, not now, not in the middle of the night with no plan. I needed distance and clarity. I needed to think like I wasn't the emotional target of some disturbing triangle that had grown far beyond simple cheating. But as I sat there shaking, trying to figure out whether Colin was unstable or dangerous, another thought slammed into me. Maybe Maya wasn't some manipulated victim caught in the crossfire of a controlling coworker. Maybe she was willingly part of whatever twisted scenario they had built together. That possibility scared me even more because I had spent nearly 2 years with her. And I thought I knew her, thought she was caring and steady and thoughtful. Yet the notes, the messages, the secret meetings, the talk of me disappearing pointed to something far more calculated. I needed evidence that wasn't digital, something physical, something undeniable. So the next morning, I acted like everything was normal. I kissed her forehead, told her I'd be out most of the day working on a project, and she smiled up at me like a woman with no secrets at all. The performance was flawless, disturbingly flawless. I drove to work and spent the entire time pretending to be buried in spreadsheets while my heart hammered every time Colin walked past my desk. He greeted me like usual, with his big confident grin and that loud voice that carried across the room. But when I looked at him now, all I could see were the messages he sent, the threats he made, the outline of him in Maya's pictures. And then I decided I couldn't stay in the building with him. I told my manager I needed the afternoon off due to a migraine, and thankfully she didn't question it. I left before lunch and drove straight to the apartment complex listed in the location logs. I didn't know what I expected to find, but I knew I needed to see the place with my own eyes. The building was a tall, modern structure with blue-tinted windows and a coded entry system. I parked across the street and watched the entrance, unsure if I'd even dare go inside. After 15 minutes, a delivery driver walked up with a stack of packages, and when a resident opened the door to let him in, I slipped in behind them. My heart pounded as I stood in the lobby, pretending to read a flyer on the wall while waiting for the elevator doors to open. According to the GPS logs, Colin's apartment was on the 6th floor. I didn't go up immediately. Instead, I walked the hallway, trying to memorize the layout in case anything happened, but nothing about the place looked threatening. It was quiet, sterile, almost boring. Eventually, when no one else was around, I stepped into the elevator and pressed 6. Every second felt like an hour as the elevator ascended. When the doors opened, I forced myself to walk slowly, breathing evenly, trying to look casual. Apartment 6B. That was the one she had visited most. I stood in front of it, staring at the peephole, wondering if Colin was inside, if he would hear me, if he would open the door and what I would even say if he did. Then I noticed something. On the floor beside the door was a package, small, flat, and addressed to Colin. The label was partially peeled, like someone had ripped off another shipping sticker from underneath. I shouldn't have touched it, but I did. I picked it up just enough to feel the contents shift inside. Paper, maybe photos, maybe documents. My hand shook as I set it back carefully. I took a picture of the package with my phone, then turned to leave, but just as I stepped into the elevator, I heard voices, a man and a woman, laughing. The woman's voice was unmistakable. It was Maya. She was here, right now, in the middle of the day when she claimed she was at work. Panic rippled through me, but I didn't step out. I held still, barely breathing, as their footsteps approached the apartment door. I heard them saying something about getting everything ready before Friday, and then the door unlocked. I pressed myself against the elevator wall, praying they wouldn't see me. The door opened fully, and in one horrifying glimpse through the narrow crack between the closing elevator doors, I saw them together, Maya holding Colin's arm, Colin leaning down to kiss her. Her smiling like she had never smiled with me. And then, right before the elevator sealed shut, I heard Colin say, "He won't see it coming." The doors closed completely, trapping me inside a metal box with the echo of those words bouncing violently around my skull. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. Friday. They were planning something for Friday. And whatever it was about me. I didn't know if they meant violence, sabotage, a setup, but I knew I had to get ahead of it. I left the building shaking, my mind racing with possibilities. And then, as I crossed the parking lot, my phone buzzed. It was a notification from the smartwatch still synced to my device. A new message from Colin to Maya. "Remember, get him out of the house tonight. I'll take care of the rest." When that message popped up, "Remember, get him out of the house tonight. I'll take care of the rest," my entire body went cold in a way I had never felt before. Not even earlier in the apartment hallway, when I watched my girlfriend kiss the man planning something against me. This wasn't cheating anymore. It wasn't betrayal or heartbreak or any of the usual ways people destroy relationships. This was something calculated, something intentional, something dangerous, and the thought that Maya could be part of it willingly made my ribs tighten until each breath felt sharp. I didn't drive home immediately. Instead, I pulled into a crowded coffee shop, parked in the far corner where I had a clear view of the lot, and sat with both hands gripping the wheel until the shaking slowed enough for me to think. If they wanted me out of the house tonight, I couldn't go home, and I couldn't let them know that I knew. If Maya realized the smartwatch had sensed, or if Colin got suspicious, the timeline they were planning might move faster. I needed to stay ahead of whatever this was. The biggest question clawing at my mind was why? Why me? Why would Maya, someone who spent months planning trips with me, someone who held my hand while we watched movies, someone who left those stupid sticky notes in my lunch bag, ever become part of something like this? Was she scared of him, manipulated? Or was she exactly who she was acting like in that apartment hallway, the deliberate architect of a life that didn't include me, willing to do whatever she needed to remove me cleanly from her path? Every possibility made my stomach turn. I took out my phone and made the hardest call of my life, 911. I didn't want to be dramatic or hysterical, so I forced my voice into a steady, controlled tone as I told the operator that I had reason to believe two people were planning to harm me, and I had proof in the form of messages and location logs. She asked if I was in immediate danger. I told her I wasn't sure. She advised me to go to a public place and wait for officers. I was already in one. Within 20 minutes, a patrol car pulled into the lot. The officers listened patiently while I explained everything: how the smartwatch sensed, the messages, the threats, the address logs, what I had witnessed in the apartment hallway. They kept asking the same questions. Did Colin ever threaten me directly in person? Had Maya shown signs of fearing him? Did they have weapons? Did I record audio? I had proof, but not the kind they could arrest someone with immediately. The messages sounded threatening, yes, but vague. The photos suggested an affair, not a murder plot. The notes could be interpreted a dozen ways. And surveillance cameras in the building wouldn't pick up sound, only visuals. The officer told me they couldn't open an official case yet without more concrete evidence, but they strongly advised me not to go home. They suggested I stay with a family member or friend for a few days while keeping the messages documented. I nodded, but my blood still boiled at the idea that these two people were planning something potentially life-altering, and I had to wait for some magical threshold of danger before anything could be done. I didn't have family nearby, so I drove to my best friend Mark's place and explained everything in one long, breathless ramble. He believed me without question because he'd always thought Maya was too polished to be real. His words, not mine, and he insisted I stay as long as needed. From his couch, I watched the smartwatch notifications roll in. First, one from Maya. "Babe, where are you? I thought we were having dinner tonight. Then another, 3 minutes later. Are you okay? Please answer. Then, Evan, seriously. What's going on? And finally, if you're trying to make me worrying, it's working. Call me. Each message felt like poison disguised as concern. Then a message from Colin. Is it done? Did he leave yet? She didn't answer. 10 minutes later, another from him. Maya, what's happening? Don't flake now. Then, do not mess this up. I screen recorded everything. Around midnight, Maya called me. Mark nearly grabbed the phone out of my hand, telling me not to answer, but I needed to hear her voice. I answered and put it on speaker. She sounded frantic, but not in the way someone might sound if they discovered they were caught cheating. Her tone was shaky, almost rehearsed, with hints of fear mixed with something I couldn't fully decode. She kept asking where I was, telling me she was worried, telling me she had a bad feeling. I told her calmly that I knew about Colin, about the messages, about the apartment. The silence on the other end was absolute. Then she whispered, Evan, you need to be careful. You don't understand. He's not who you think he is. I asked what that meant, but she kept repeating, just don't come home. Please don't come home. I asked if she was in danger. She said nothing, just heavy, trembling breathing. Then the line cut. I tried calling back, but her phone was off. My pulse hammered in my ears. Was she scared? Was she acting? Was this part of whatever play she and Colin had created? I didn't know, but then my phone buzzed again. A message from the smartwatch. From Colin. If you're with someone, it won't help. You're already done. I felt something snap inside me, not fear, but clarity. For the first time in 2 days of spiraling discovery, I saw the situation clearly. I wasn't going to sit in hiding while two people plotted out the terms of my existence. I forwarded every message, screenshot, location log, photo, whiteboard picture, and audio recording of Maya's phone call to the detective the officers had referred me to earlier. I wrote a statement. I documented everything. And within 20 hours, the detective called me back with news that nearly buckled my knees. Colin had a record, not a clean one, not even close. 2 dismissed restraining orders. A suspicious workplace incident filed years ago. A history of aggressive behavior. And the address where Maya had been meeting him, it wasn't legally his. It belonged to an older woman, his aunt, who had filed a complaint about him bringing trouble into her home. With that information and the messages threatening me, the police were finally able to bring both of them in for questioning. I wasn't present, but the detective later told me something I never expected. Maya broke first. She admitted to the affair, admitted to lying, admitted to the notes, but insisted she never planned to harm me. According to her, the messages about getting rid of me were part of Colin's obsession and anger, not hers. She said he pressured her, threatened to ruin her job, threatened to expose personal things, even threatened to hurt himself if she didn't comply. She said the whiteboard notes were his plans, not hers, and she was pretending to go along with them because she was afraid. I don't know how much of that was true. Maybe all of it, maybe none. Colin denied everything, of course, but when the police confiscated his devices, they found a folder with my name on it, full of photos, schedules, screenshots of my social media, even pictures of my car. Enough to prove he had been watching me, enough to get him charged. Maya wasn't arrested, but she was issued a protection order on my behalf and told not to contact me again. She violated it once, leaving a handwritten letter in my mailbox apologizing, begging for forgiveness, but I gave it to the police without opening it. I didn't want answers anymore. I didn't want closure. I wanted distance and peace. It took weeks for my life to level out again. Weeks of sleeping at Mark's place, weeks of checking the windows twice, weeks of feeling like my own shadow was following me. But eventually, the fear faded, and the heartbreak became something duller, something survivable. The smartwatch, the same glitchy device that triggered everything, is still in my drawer. Part of me wants to throw it away. Another part keeps it as a reminder of how much you can miss when you trust the wrong people, and how sometimes the ugliest truth arrives through something as small as a vibrating wristband. I didn't just catch my girlfriend cheating through her smartwatch. I caught the reality that someone I loved was living a life behind my back, one that nearly swallowed me whole. And I survived it.